Welcome to a Wiser Retirement podcast. Before we get started with the episode, I want to tell you about a new ebook available on our website called Buyer Beware. Why do they keep trying to sell you that annuity? This ebook covers the various types of annuities, negatives to owning annuities, and better investment alternatives to annuities. To download this ebook, you can click the link in the episode notes or go to wiserinvestor.com and you'll find it at the bottom of the page. Now on to today's episode.
Our theme for our podcast is financial success is intentional. And so before we get started today, I wanted to introduce a friend of Wiser Wealth, Amy Rambo. Hey, Amy.
Hey, Casey. How's it going?
Doing good. Amy is a travel agent with Blue Pineapple Travel. Thank you. And, I wanted to bring you on before we start the show today, to just talk a little bit about the things that you're doing for your clients. As we go through review meetings with our clients, I've noticed that the world is a little upside down, or feels upside down, and people seem more reluctant to get out there and do the things that they wanted to do. And yeah, I'm always like, you save money. You were great with money, or still are great with money, and you're sitting at home, but you're not doing anything. This is not how you're supposed to be spending the best years, what some would say is the best years of your life, right?
For sure. And I think part of that is the pandemic, right? Some people got a little bit burned by, maybe they made plans and then they fell through. And so now you're feeling maybe a little bit hesitant to kind of get back out there and plan something again. But the world is opening back up. I mean, it is going. It's hopping. So
I travel a lot for business, and airplanes are full, airports are full, hotels are full. So people are moving, not the demographic at our firm, evidently.
Exactly. And I think part of that is, that reluctance. And if you do see things on the news, but of course the news is going to report all the worst aspects. So I think that's part of what is a huge benefit of travel, is getting out there and seeing, things aren't as bad as maybe you're seeing on the news. I find that when I travel, I'm always greatly surprised by just the warmth of the people that you meet when you're on a trip, whether that's on a cruise ship. I was just on one recently, of just the staff working it, very warm and gracious people, or it's somebody in a street cafe in Paris. It's places can have reputations, or you can have a vision of something on the news and have some hesitancy. But I think it really is getting out there and seeing that the world's a lot more friendly and welcoming than the news portrays it sometimes. And there are ways to travel well that can definitely help make your experience the one you want it to be, and not one that you're nervous about or turns out to be a bad one.
It gives you an anxiety about.
Yes.
Yeah. So when I think travel agent, I think 1980s, big computers.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Only way to buy a ticket was to call the travel agent.
Yeah.
What's a modern day travel agent? What is it that you guys do?
Right. So it's really kind of funny, because when the business started in the early 20th century, they really called themselves travel advisors, and they were in brick and mortar stores or by a train station. You'd come in, they'd have their brochure, and they'd tell you where to go. So they really advise people what's out there, what's available. And then of course, with the rise of airlines, and it became that kind of 70s, 80s, 90s stereotype of you're just the person pushing the button on the seat ticket. And with the internet, of course, that changed things. You can get out there, you can book your own hotels, you can book your own car rentals, all of that. So the business shifted back to kind of what it had been in the beginning. We really are a consulting and advising business. We are there to make sure that you have the trip you really want to go on. Part of that is the time it takes to plan a trip. So because there is so much information out there online, it can take a long time to sift through it all. So it can be a little overwhelming to think about planning a trip for yourself. So even though things are available, it takes time to put it all together. So we're really a service that on the one hand takes that time for you. We will plan it for you. We will do all the research that you need. We're going to talk to you about what you really want to do. So the benefit of using a travel advisor really goes way beyond the pushing of the button. We have the time to spend on the research that it takes to plan a trip well. We have the training. We are constantly in contact with suppliers, hotels, cruises, tours, to know what's out there, what's available, what's the best option in certain price points and markets. If you want to go to London, if you want to go to Paris, or where's the best hotel for you? Do you want something sleek and modern? Do you want something very traditional? We're going to know those things. We're going to know what is trending, what's kind of a classic. We have relationships with these partners. So part of what we do is go to conferences and meet hotels, chains, meet cruise representatives. So that means that if you book through us, you kind of get the benefit of those relationships, which means you're just going to have a more elevated experience. So kind of talking about some of those hesitancies and being nervous about what it's going to be like to get out there. You could book with a travel advisor and, be going off to your Parisian hotel, and there's a high likelihood that I'll have the email address of the general manager of that hotel, and then you can I'll send them a little note that says my client's showing up on April 12th, look out for him. It just raises the experience that you're going to have there, the overall feeling of the trip. So if you're not somebody who has traveled and hasn't yourself established those relationships, you get the benefit of them because you've worked with a travel agent who has, the travel advisor who has. And then I would say probably the other most benefit for using a travel advisor is the relationship you have with them, because we're going to ask you questions that are going to give us the best information we can to give you the trip that you really want.
So if you haven't been somewhere before, and you don't know exactly where to stay, then obviously someone on your team has been there, has done that, and they know what you're looking for, and you should go here and you should go there. And
Absolutely.
I'm a creature of habit. I remember the first time I took my kids to Park City, I spent hours trying to figure out where to stay, where to make dinner reservations, right? But then the second time I went, I knew exactly where to stay. I knew exactly what I would have done differently. So you kind of take the error out of the planning experience. What about travel disruption? So if I'm flying, a flight gets canceled, or do I call you?
Well, it depends. So airfare is a tricky thing in itself. So oftentimes we will advise people to book because there are apps now.
Book their own airfare.
Yeah, with Delta and stuff. And so, but sometimes that disruption then it's a domino that affects every other piece. So while maybe you're on the Delta app, you've called me because then your canceled Delta flight means that you're not going to be checking into your hotel at the same time. You're going to miss
transportation's going to be delayed.
Exactly. Yeah. Your transfer from the airport to the hotel is going to be disrupted. So while you're only focused maybe on that one piece of the delayed or canceled flight, you've called me and I'm like fiercely working behind the scenes for every other piece of your trip, putting things back into place for this new updated disruption.
What another thing that just came to mind was we have so many grandparents here that want to take their kids and grandkids on that Disney trip. Ends up being 15, 20 people sometimes. This is where a planner comes in. I'm sure that you guys done a lot of Disney stuff.
Absolutely. Yes. We have a great team with a lot of Disney experience. And yeah, Disney's its own beast.
Yes, I'm sure.
For sure. It is. And it's not even if you're just a family of four. There are so many tips and tricks when it comes to Disney. And being a travel advisor for that is huge. And I would say with that, the idea of the grandparents with the grandkids, again, having somebody who's got your back, who's going to listen to you and what your family is like and what you really want, can definitely give you the confidence to take them, because traveling as a family is such a huge gift that you can give to your grandkids. It
experiences,
gives them experiences,
absolutely.
Exactly. That love of the world, love of people. It's such a good gift that you can give to your kids.
Well, ultimately, you want to leave a legacy, and sometimes legacies can be in dollar amounts, how much you leave to the next generation, but it also can be experiences and memories. And I think that's probably my favorite is what can we leave memories, positive memories to the next generation. And you're helping people do that. Thank you for your time, Amy. And if they want to find you, how do they find you?
Yeah, you can find us at bluepineappletravel.com. You can also find me at AmyR_bluepineappletravel at either Facebook or Instagram.
And then we'll link in our show notes as well. So you scroll down to the show notes and you can find a link directly to the website. Thanks again, Amy.
Thank you, Casey.
Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast. We believe the best financial advice should always be conflict-free. I'm your host, Casey Smith. Guiding you to financial freedom today is my co-host, Missie Beach. Hey, Missy.
Hey, Casey. How are you doing?
Doing good. Today we're going to talk about steps you can take to retire early. There's a whole FIRE movement out there. People,
yes.
young people wanting to save for retirement. You know, They profile this like on CNBC all the time, and it's like this person has $120,000 a year in passive income, and then you like read through and you think, oh my gosh, man, that person's really killing it. They can retire, they're not to work, and it's usually something related to real estate, but they have all this debt. So in the end, they're living on $30,000 a year, which most people think retirement. They think they can do whatever they want. They think freedom, but
No.
maybe that's okay for some people, but you'd have to live a very simple lifestyle to be checking out by 45,
Well,
40.
that's just it. Yeah, if you can
30.
live on 30 grand a year.
Right.
I mean, do you want to do that? Do you really want to live that simple of a life?
I mean,
Some
there's,
do.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But I just think that to do it that early, where's the room for error? I guess you could always go back to work, I guess.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. You know, you're still young, so you're still employable. You still have job skills, so you could re-enter the workforce if you have to.
Right. With a big gap on your resume.
Yeah. So
I'm partial
that?
to work while you can work, and I'm also partial to finding things that bring you joy as you're doing them. So I understand there's a lot of people who just don't want to be in the rat race because they don't like the race.
They don't want to work for the man or woman.
All right, so let's, Missy, you're our senior planner here, not in age, just in experience.
Thank you for.
So let's
clarifying.
talk about steps to retire early. We've done this on other podcasts actually. You can learn a little more about this. Episode 147, if you want to retire before 59 and a half. There's what you need to know about Rule 72T and early retirement. Episode 107, which I think this is going to be a good theme for us today as well, is get rid of debt before you retire. That's the part that is really crippling. Is want to retire early, but you got to live a certain lifestyle, which we'll get into in a minute. So yeah, what's step number one?
Well, step number one would be get a plan. I mean, everything has to be intentional. You just can't wing it and hope that you're going to retire at this dream age, because a lot of people think like, oh yeah, I want to retire in my 50s. I don't want to have to work till I'm, old and wrinkly. I want to retire early. But then they don't put a plan in place. Nothing is intentional with their savings or their spending. They have no clue how much it's going to take to retire in terms of savings, and they don't know how much they want to spend in retirement. They think, oh yeah, it'd be great to just continue my current lifestyle, but is their plan going to support that? Who knows? So it all takes time and thought and figuring out a plan.
So setting a realistic retirement goal, that's probably the hardest question for everyone, is how much money do they need to live on a monthly basis?
Yes.
Because they don't even know what they're living on now.
Oh, you're so right. And I have to steer people away from thinking about this number. People are like, what's my number? What do I have to hit? Because I think a lot of online retirement calculators will kind of get people in this mode where They think, oh, if I just save $2 million, then I'm good.
Right.
You know? And I'm
Right.
like, no, it doesn't work like
Well,
that.
the earlier you retire, the more you'd have to have, right?
Absolutely. So it comes down to like, what's your retirement age goal? You know, how much do you think you're going to spend? And so I'm like, get away from thinking about this number because it's irrelevant. You know, if you want to retire at 40, your number is going to be different than if you're going to retire at 60. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, for our young entrepreneurs listening, your burn rate. so to start a business, you have a burn rate, right? Because you're not making money at first. You're just spending money is to move the business up. It's no different in personal finance. You have a burn rate. So this is how much it's going to cost you, and it's not a bare bones number. It's not, oh, I can get by on $3,500 a month. No, it's probably more like $6,500 a month for most people. Right? We have some families here that if they didn't have $15,000 a month, they think the sky was falling. So it just depends on what is going on in your life and what your lifestyle is, and come out and you back into that. You back into that number. What's if you're going to carry debt? What's the debt service? How much does it cost to feed you? How much it costs to do the things you want to be able to do? Right? Not sit at home. I can pay my bills number. And that's what most people gravitate to, is they think that they have to come up with a number just to pay the bills, and you need to add much more to that.
You just hit on the D word, which is the next point, Casey, debt.
Right.
I mean, number one, when you're thinking about retiring early, is you have to get rid of your debt right away now before you can even think about saving for retirement.
Yeah.
That's what I counsel all my clients. You know, get rid of any existing debt, consumer debt, student loans, car loans. You got to learn to pay cash for your cars. Debt is a real killer when it comes to long-term planning.
Well, we always tell people that retirement is about cash flow.
Absolutely.
Right? It has less to do about rate of return, believe it or not. It has more to do about cash flow. And if you don't have a $2,000 mortgage, if you don't have an $800 credit card payment or car payment, right, or home loan or whatever it is, then that's $800 less that your portfolio has to carry.
Absolutely.
Right?
Oh, I just heard this statistic on the radio the other morning on my way into work, that the average car loan these days is $1,000 a month.
It's crazy.
And I thought, what a budget killer.
People have 2 cars.
Yeah.
It's $2,000 a month.
That could be going to retirement savings or
Right.
to just quality of life expenditures. And if you can just wipe that out one time and reset your cash flow to having no car debt, it's incredible.
And you do that by eliminating the car that you got, or sell it and buy something cheaper. And then you save your car payment to yourself. So you're always putting money in savings. So when you have large expenses, then you pull it out.
Exactly.
It's pretty simple, but nobody does it that way.
I know, but it's so freeing once that car payment is gone, and then you've got that $600 or $700 a month,
Right.
and you're just socking it away in an online savings account.
Right.
Hey, earning 4% these days.
Yep.
And then suddenly you've got that nice pile of money to buy your next car.
I think it's hard for people to do that in our area, Metro Atlanta, because we see so many, I hate this word, I cringe when I hear it, rich people.
Oh, yeah. But are they, Casey? What does that mean?
Well, I've talked about this before, but I guess over 159 podcasts, we probably talked about everything at this point. But it's there's rich people and there's wealthy people, and that's what I try to tell my kids. Like, you have a lot of rich friends. Now, wealth is hidden. You don't see wealth, and so that's the part that it is really the freeing part, is the wealthy part, not the rich part.
Well, you know what's funny? I drive around Buckhead and I look at all these cars, and my mind goes to, God, I wonder how much their car payment is. Because I
Right.
highly doubt they're paying cash for these $150,000 cars.
in that area, probably not. No,
Yeah.
there are a few. There are
Oh,
a few.
yeah.
But yeah, it's a status symbol, I guess. But man, what's interesting is dealerships have gotten more creative over the years. I had someone tell me one time, it's like, well, yeah, it's expensive, but it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. It's like interesting,
Interesting. Okay.
So get rid of the debt.
Yeah.
I tell the example all the time. We had a client many years ago, but he drove up in a Hyundai. It's all kind of dented in, kind of older Hyundai. He's wearing overalls. He had snuff in his mouth. $3.5 million in his brokerage account.
Wow. And that's why.
And if you saw him on the side of the road, he'd be like, "Yeah, look at that poor guy. That's one poor choice after poor choice, right?"
If they only knew.
Not that way at all. Not that anybody needs to get overalls, snuff, and a beat up Hyundai, but the point is that you have to look a little different. You and I both have older paid off cars.
20 years old.
Mine's not quite that old, but yeah, it's the choices that you make, right?
But it's funny. Someone, a new client was listening to one of the older podcasts and asked me, Missy, what's your 20-year-old car? I heard it on the podcast.
I heard it on the podcast. That's funny. All right. Let's talk about investing wisely.
Yeah. So, the earlier you save and invest, it makes a difference. Compounding. And I was just having this discussion with my youngest son the other day because it's tax time. And, he got a W-2 from his summer job. And I said, okay, well, how much of this do you want to put in your Roth IRA? And so he's like, I don't know, Mom, whatever you tell me. And I was like, no, it's not whatever I tell you.
Right.
Let's sit down and, see the benefit of doing this and why. And I said, you're 17 now. Let's compound this over, 50 years to retirement and see how much, $500 will be. And I forget the number, but he's like,
it's a big number.
Seriously, Mom?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's why we do it.
Right. Yeah. If you can get that started early. There's life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and compounding. Those are all things that should be free, right? Even in investing doesn't have to be complicated. I see young kids today, and they're like trying to buy Apple. Not even Apple. They're really more into crypto stuff, but they're buying individual stocks, and I think that's interesting learning experience. But I think really long term, you just want to teach them the value of the S&P 500.
Yes.
Knowing that in the SPIVA report that comes out every 6 months, the latest one, 96% of fund managers fail to beat the S&P 500 over 10 years. Yeah. Over 20 years, it's 98%. 3 years, it's still pretty high, but maybe like 60% fail to beat it or something like that. But ultimately, we don't need to be picking stocks. We need to be investing in the long-term core averages, like the S&P, small cap stocks, right? International broad index, because in the end, that's what wins. That's what beats everybody.
You're right. And, I think that's one of the hardest concepts to get across to people is they're like, well, I was teaching my kids, about investing and let them pick out their stocks.
Right.
And I'm like, well, that's good in theory, but you're missing the whole concept of diversification.
Yeah.
And I'm
like,
like,
long-term focus.
Yeah. What if the company they pick goes out of business in 10 years
Right.
and they've got nothing? So
Right.
let's talk about the S&P 500 index and why you do that. And then they're buying 500 companies.
Yep.
So I think it's, investing wisely.
My kids have their money in a green light card, and they had coins. Well, my father-in-law passed away many years ago. My mother-in-law finally liquidated the coin collection.
Truly coins.
He would sit up late at night and he would buy those things offline. To buy the American dollar, whatever, special edition.
Limited.
And by the way, he had those for like 15, 20 years and didn't make money. She didn't make money on any of it. She's like, I saw receipts on what he paid and I wasn't getting quoted. And it was, I The markup is so big on those things. It's just almost impossible to make money over the long run. But it's something that he enjoyed doing for whatever reason.
It was a hobby.
And she chose not to pass that on to the next generation. She just was going to be done with it.
Well, good for her.
And so the kids got a little bit of money out of that. And I made them put it all in the S&P 500 on their green light card.
Nice.
Unfortunately, 2022 wasn't the best year to be investing. So they already have negative connotations with it. It's like, Dad, you put in this amount of money, but it says it's down 10%. And I'm like, yeah, that's what happens. You just,
for now,
you just keep putting money in.
you're young.
Exactly. Yeah. If they could see their 529s and money going in from when they were born to now, they would feel much different about that. I'll probably show that to them eventually. Consider a side hustle you have on here. Is this, what are you thinking here? Is this to pay off the debt so you can accelerate your retirement savings? Maybe?
Yes, that is a great reason to do it. And I'll give a personal example that I didn't even realize I was doing it at the time. So when I was young, fresh out of college, I had my corporate job during the day. And then I saw an ad in the newspaper. This is back in the day when people still read the newspaper.
Right.
And it was a ballet studio that needed a ballet instructor. So I thought, oh, well, that was my passion, In college, I was a business major and dance minor. And I was like, oh, well, sure, I can plug in and get my dance classes for free and teach. And so little did I know that was my side hustle at the time. So
Right.
It was just extra money that I threw in my savings account, and it just grew and grew and grew. And that was a down payment for a house one day.
Oh, wow.
So that was doing something that I loved,
Yeah.
but it was earning extra income on the side. And so that's kind of what I tell clients is don't make it a chore. Find something that you're passionate about and that you like to do, ideally.
Our younger clients, they do this in similar ways. A lot of yoga instructing,
Yes,
and fitness trainers, things like
Fitness
that.
trainers, sports coaches, a lot of baseball instructors or golf instructors. So it's finding some hobby of theirs that, they can't make a living full time, but they still have a passion for it. So yeah, they monetize it.
Yeah. eBay sales
Yeah.
of all the stuff that you shouldn't have bought that's still in the original packaging. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This next one you have on your list, live below your means. I would say that every wealthy client that we have here has always done that.
Oh, absolutely.
If they make $300,000 a year, they're living on 150. If they make 150, they're living on 75. So they always live well below their means.
And what was your quote about that? Something about you're too rich to.
Oh, yeah. Occasionally we see clients that have, these are mostly hourly people. Mm-hmm. They need a jump start. They don't need wealth management per se, but you'll start looking over and they're making $300,000 a year, but they have all this credit card debt and I like to be honest with people, but I'll say you're too rich to be this poor.
Yeah, I love that quote because they've got these healthy salaries, but yet they've let it kind of get out of control.
Right.
And so if they could just curb their spending and live within their means.
Yeah, we're all guilty of growing into our income. He's like, well, if I could just make X amount of dollars more, there's a point of which you just have too much, and you're like, I don't know what to do with all this excess. And these are typically people that don't have club memberships, that don't have, they just like being with family. They probably do travel and camp or something like that. Not like tent camping, but they have a travel trailer or something.
Right.
But those people seem to be less. Have less expensive lifestyles, and so as they move up the executive ladder, then they see things a little differently. But no, we do have quite a few younger people who come in who are doing very well financially, but they're what I call rich people, not wealthy people.
Exactly. And that's why it all goes back to having a financial plan, because these people have never looked at it in context of the long-term big picture. And so when you sit down with them and say, okay, well, this is how much you really need to be saving in order to retire at this age and spend this much, they're like, oh, okay, well, sure, I can do that. I just didn't know.
Right.
And so then they can curb their spending and, max out the 401k or do whatever it is that we discuss and think is reasonable so they can rein it in.
Yep. Next one on your list is consider downsizing.
Yeah. So this is something that I see with kind of middle or older middle-aged clients that kind of get stuck in the family house maybe a little too long. And sometimes, there's so much maintenance that comes into play with an older home, and they don't need, 5,000, 6,000 square feet anymore. And so there's always the thought of, potentially weighing the thought of downsizing. But then, downsizing, are you really going to save any money? Are you going to net anything from that downsizing move? Because a lot of times you're going to just pay the same darn thing for the smaller house.
You're going to sell the house for $800 and you're going to go buy a 55 plus community house for $800.
Yeah, exactly.
and you're going to have higher HOA fees than you had in your old house, but it's a lifestyle and maybe it's easier. I think there's a path this is a little off of the retiring early track, but if there's something to be said for hiring good lawn service, a good house cleaner, and a good maintenance person.
Oh, yeah.
And just stay where you are if you're comfortable with that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now some people just want to change for other reasons, but it's not going to be any less expensive to move somewhere else. Now, if you're moving out of your area to somewhere else, that's different.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Then definitely downsize. But you're right. If you're staying in the same geographic area, you're not going to save money, perhaps. But I do encourage clients, take care of all the deferred maintenance because, they're like, but I haven't, replaced the roof and my deck is rotting and what. I'm like, you've got to take care of your, probably largest asset on your balance sheet,
Exactly.
So, okay, we'll find a source for these repairs, You've deferred it for 20 years and okay, it's time to bite the bullet.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Yeah. Consulting a financial advisor. So obviously we're a little biased on this topic, but I've seen a lot of DIY choices and it's not that they're bad choices, but DIYers don't always see the big picture properly.
Right. And I worry about online calculators. Are you
definitely
ready for retirement?
Yes.
And you're going to get 5 different answers from 5 different calculators.
One of my favorite stories is an engineer that wanted to hire us. This is an hourly financial planning client, and somehow he got a hold of our financial planning software from another advisor. I don't know what that advisor was thinking. I guess he thought, well, if I just give this guy the tool, then I'll get his assets to manage or something. And anyway, so Brad talks to him, wins him as a prospect. He comes in and he meets with me and he goes, well, I'm not ready to write a check because I've already done all this. I said, okay, great. Who did this for you? I did it myself. And then he pushes over across the table a Money Guide Pro plan. He had done it himself. I've been doing this for 23 years. You're not gonna catch me on something. Now, my 20-year-old self would have been very nervous at the time.
Oh, sure.
but me at 45, not a chance. Nope. So I said, oh, this is interesting. So I started looking through it, and I just immediately noticed that it was just too simple. There weren't enough data inputs. and so I said, okay, well, this is why you go through the process with us. And I rattled it all off. And he signed up immediately, and we get through the end of the process. And this was not a I told you so moment, but it bordered on it. I said, look, this is your plan, right? You had yourself retiring 5 years later, living on $100,000 a year less than what we have done in the plan. I said, it's not the software. The software is not magic. It's the advisor understanding how everything connects together. Wow. And he didn't want to talk about it. Understandably, but I just want to say, look, there's a benefit of having a professional advisor. And in our case, he ended up with the whole team because he's using tax services. He used our legal services.
Wow.
So he ended up with a room full of true wealth managers,
whole team,
and was able to go through that. So, and then ultimately, I think for most people, it's times of trouble. So in 2020, man, there were so many job changes. And we have a very healthy amount of airline pilots here. We were calculating how long they could live on their cash if they lost their jobs. I mean, these are all kinds of crazy things that we already had the data for. We just kind of brushed it up and started doing the calculations, where if you were shopping for a financial advisor, then it'd been very difficult to find an advisor in that time period that would have actually have done that.
Absolutely.
Just because 90% of our business, our industry, is trying to sell you something. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so they're like, oh yeah, I can help you with this. But in the back of their mind, they're thinking, oh, but I need to manage his money.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I need that 1% or that 1.5% fee. Right. So ultimately, we do that. That's 90% of our business is managing people's assets, which includes financial planning, in-depth, comprehensive financial planning. But not everyone needs that. Some people are okay with just the plan, and they can manage things on their own, especially if all they have is their 401k plans. That's super simple for us to manage, looking at once a year. We don't actually have to touch it.
Exactly.
Right?
And I think that's where we add so much value, is being able to look at 401k plans for our clients and customize that allocation.
Correct.
Because so often clients are in really bad funds within their 401k plans that are really expensive or just the wrong asset mix. And
right.
Yeah, that's just part of our
401k plans have really evolved over the years. There are low cost index funds. When I was on the Airline Pilot Association Retirement Insurance Committee, I worked really, really hard to try to get index funds into our plan to begin with.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And this was a while ago, but we're now index funds almost always are in plans unless you have management just doesn't get it and they have like an American Funds 401k plan.
Yeah, the custodian matters.
Right. That in case everyone's kind of doomed at that point. But with so many class action lawsuits that I don't really see those in the main headlines. We saw I felt like all the tobacco people, when they finished with tobacco, they kind of moved into the 401k space. And they took down some pretty big companies having to reimburse employees because they didn't have available funds at the cheapest option. And if you think about it, if you're going to sue and you're going to win on the fact that none of these managers really beat the S&P over the long term. So all of a sudden, index funds started appearing in 401k plans as they should have.
Absolutely.
But people kind of gloss over those for whatever reason. And they're usually the cheapest ones in the plan too. So that's important because if you're going to retire early, you want your expenses to be as low as possible on that portfolio.
Yeah.
You don't need to be sending money. This is a video that I'm working on now. I'll spill the beans just a little bit, but so on the airline pilot front, most of the majors, so Delta, American, United, the airline puts in 16% of whatever the pilot makes into the 401k plan.
Wow, that's a generous contribution.
16%. It's not a match. You just get it.
Really?
Then you have your max that you can also put in. So a second year first officer should be maxing out their 401k to the IRS limit of $60,000 a year. So obviously there's big money being developed in these, saved in these 401k plans. And there's a couple of companies, investment firms that are after this money. And so they want to convince the pilots to move the money out of the 401k into what they call a brokerage link. So a brokerage link is attached to the 401k plan, still inside the 401k, but you can invest in anything you want. Well, the 401k plans are so big, the average expense ratio for a Delta example is 3 basis points. That's 0.03%. That's your total fee. That's super cheap.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're going to move your money and you're going to put it into the brokerage link, you better be outperforming. But in the brokerage link, you're not getting any special pricing. So in the brokerage link, your average fee is going to go up to about 0.75%.
Ugh.
Then on top of that, you got to pay the advisor. Well, the advisor tax on a 1% fee.
Wow.
So I had Brad do the math yesterday. Do you know what it cost to have someone managing your 401k plan? Like, not like how we manage it, where we do it as a courtesy.
Right.
And then we charge our time. So we spend an hour researching this, you pay 1 hour.
Yeah.
If you have someone managing, so there's one particular company made up of former airline pilots who turned into financial advisors who are advertising heavily into the Delta community. If you got hired there, and let's say you worked 40 years, so you're a regional airline pilot for a couple of years, and you went to Delta and you worked all the way to 65, it would cost you $2.1 million in fees.
Wow.
From the time you started working to the time you retired.
Because you're maxing out.
Because you're maxing out and they're putting in so much money. They're charging 1% management fee.
And 0.75.
$2.1 million in fees.
That's awful.
It's criminal.
Yeah, I mean, that's the effect of compounding.
So think about this. I said earlier, the SPIVA report. So the SPIVA report says that these active managers like this company and the funds that they choose and all the moving around they do of funds.
Yeah.
Okay. Statistically over that time period, there's only a 2% chance they beat the S&P 500 inside the plan that costs 0.01%. And the diversification of that's around 0.03. Right? Isn't that insane?
Yeah. Who takes that kind of bet?
Yeah. But no one thinks like that. No one thinks, because unfortunately for the airline pilot side, you've got one with the 3 wives, his first wife, the 2 flight attendants, and now he's divorced. So you eliminate him. He's not participating in the plan. No. But then you have this segment of pilots that just, the egos are pretty big. And so this company just really plays those egos, like you deserve the best and you can beat something. And quite honestly, it's not just the pilots. I mean, most people today think that they can win. It started with the participation trophies, right? Everybody's a winner. Well, in this case, the S&P 500 is the part that nobody can beat.
No.
So you have to be so careful of how much money that you are putting into paying for advice, because over a long time period. Now, when you retire, this is airline pilot or anybody, the portfolio has to change. You can't leave that money in a 401k plan, because 401k plans, how they get built is based on a census of the group. So therefore, that's why you see all these growth funds built into the plan. You don't, on the bond side, you have 1 or 2, maybe 3 choices. And that's because there's no one over 65 typically in the plan. They don't need all
the bonds.
Right? So you don't need a bond strategy. You just kind of need the average. But when you retire, you need a very different bond type strategy. And so that's why you move your money out. And that's why advisors like us come into play, because now we can manage those using low cost index funds to not only get the best rate of return, but also create the cash buckets.
Oh, that's key.
For retirement, right? So you have your emergency reserve, you have your first 5 years of income needs, something very safe. The next 5 years getting you to 10, and then 10 plus, that's usually equities, and you'll probably never touch those in your lifetime, right? So that system can't be built inside a 401k plan, but you can certainly do that outside that plan. But that was a little bit of a tangent, but the point of it all is, if you want to retire early, you have to make sure that not only are your personal expenses kept low, but your portfolio is growing efficiently.
Absolutely.
And financial advisors are trained to figure out how to do that, right?
Yes. You need a fiduciary on your side.
Ultimately, it's a lifestyle, retiring early.
It is.
That you kind of have to fight for.
Everything is intentional. It doesn't just happen.
Right. Right.
You got to create a plan, Casey.
And if you're a business owner and you have a liquidation point, that's intentional too.
Oh, yeah.
Because typically businesses get sold at a certain X above EBITDA, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have to make sure that your P&L and your balance sheet are looking really healthy, right? It's an intentional process.
Right. You've got to have a goal or like a value set that like that's your trigger point.
Yeah.
You don't take the first offer that comes knocking at your door unless it's one that meets that bar.
Correct. So ultimately, I think Brad and I earlier this year had a great couple series on setting goals. I don't know how people get through lives without having goals set. We measure everything around here.
Oh yeah, we talk about goals all the time.
But yeah, if you're looking to retire early, reach out to Missie Beach. She's our senior advisor on retiring early. It's a new title. Can I fit that in a business card?
Sure. I love to make clients happy when we can move that retirement date early.
That's right. All right. Well, thanks for your time, Missy.
All right. Thanks, Casey.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you don't miss any new episodes. We'd also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out. This episode was produced and edited by Ken Hoadley.